The girl grew up in a small, quiet neighborhood where most days looked the same. The houses were close together, and people knew each other by face, if not by name. She was only 8 years old, but from a very young age, she noticed sounds more than sights. She listened carefully to everything around her: the rhythm of footsteps on the street, the hum of old ceiling fans, the soft clatter of dishes in the kitchen. Sounds stayed with her longer than anything else. Her family lived simply. There was no luxury, no extra money for hobbies or lessons. Life was about school, chores, and helping each other get through the day. Yet, in the corner of the living room sat an old upright piano. It had been there long before she was born. Some keys were yellowed, a few made dull sounds, and one stuck if pressed too hard. Still, to her, it was the most fascinating thing in the house. When she was very young, she would sit near the piano and touch the keys gently, one by one. First, it was just noise, but over time, those sounds began to make sense to her. She noticed how certain notes felt calm, while others felt sharp or sad. No one taught her this. She simply felt it. She started copying melodies she heard from television shows or from a neighbor's radio, pressing the keys slowly until the sound matched what she remembered. Her family thought it was cute at first. They smiled when they heard her playing simple tunes. They did not realize that something unusual was happening. She was not just repeating sounds. She was understanding them. She could hear a song once and remember it clearly. Not just the tune but the timing and feeling behind it. School was ordinary for her. She did well enough, but she was quiet. Teachers noticed she often tapped her fingers on the desk, creating patterns without thinking. During breaks, she preferred sitting alone, listening to the sounds around her instead of talking. Some classmates thought she was strange. Others ignored her completely. She did not mind. Her world felt full already. In the evenings, after homework was done, she returned to the piano. The old instrument responded to her touch as if it recognized her. She practiced without knowing she was practicing. Hours passed, but she never felt tired. She was not trying to be good. She was simply being herself. One day, a visiting relative noticed her playing. The room went quiet as the small hands moved across the keys with confidence. The music was not perfect, but it was full of feeling. When she finished, the adults looked at each other in surprise. They asked her where she learned to play like that. She only shrugged. She had no answer. Soon after, her family found a local music teacher who agreed to meet her. The teacher did not expect much. Many parents believed their children were talented. It was common. But when the girl sat at the piano and played, the teacher's expression changed. The teacher asked her to repeat a difficult set of notes after hearing them once. She did it without effort. Then she did it again, faster. Lessons began, though they were limited. Money was always a problem. Sometimes weeks passed between sessions. Yet the lack of regular lessons did not slow her progress. She learned faster than expected, absorbing information as if it had always been inside her. Sheet music, which confused many beginners, felt natural to her. She did not struggle with it. She understood it like a language she already spoke. At home, she practiced the same way she always had, alone, quietly, focused. The piano, though old, carried her forward. She learned to adjust her touch to its flaws, turning broken sounds into something beautiful. This taught her control and patience without her realizing it. Word slowly spread. Neighbors stopped by to listen. Some stood outside the window, not wanting to disturb her. People whispered that she was special. Others said it was just childhood talent that would fade. Her family did not know what to believe. They only knew that music made her happy, and that was enough. As time passed, the teacher suggested something unexpected. There was a formal evaluation coming up, judged by respected music experts. It was not a competition meant for children so young. Most participants were teenagers or adults who had trained for years. The teacher hesitated before suggesting it, knowing the pressure could be too much. But the girl listened quietly and nodded. She was not afraid. To her, it was simply another piano. Her family worried. They feared disappointment, embarrassment, and judgment. They feared people laughing at a small child trying to do something beyond her age. But they also saw the calm confidence in her eyes when she played. It was not confidence born from pride. Came from comfort, from belonging. In the days leading up to the evaluation, she did not change her routine. She went to school, did her chores, and practiced in the evenings. There was no stress in her movements. Music was still joy, not pressure. She did not know what justices were or why people failed difficult pieces. She only knew that when she saw notes, she could hear them already playing in her mind. The night before the event, the house was quiet. She sat at the piano one last time before sleeping. Her fingers moved gently, filling the room with soft sound. Her family listened from another room, holding their breath without realizing it. None of them knew that the next day would change everything. At that moment, she was still just a child in a simple home, playing an old piano. No audience, no judges, no expectations. Just sound, silence, and a girl who understood music in a way that words could not explain. The day of the evaluation arrived quietly, without excitement or noise. The girl woke up early, not because she was nervous, but because her body was used to rising with the morning light. She ate a simple breakfast while her family moved around the house more slowly than usual. Everyone was thinking about the same thing, but no one said it out loud. The building where the evaluation was held looked large and serious from the outside. Tall walls, wide doors, and long hallways made the girl feel smaller than usual. She held onto her family's hand as they walked inside. The air smelled faintly of polish and old paper. Sounds echoed differently here, bouncing off the walls in a way she was not used to. Inside the waiting area, people sat quietly with instruments and folders. Most of them were much older than her. Some stretched their fingers. Others stared at sheet music with tense faces. A few glanced at the girl, surprised to see someone so young. Their looks were not unkind, but they were full of doubt. The girl sat on a chair that felt too big for her legs. Her feet did not touch the floor. She swung them gently, listening. The building was full of sound. Soft scales played behind closed doors. Nervous coughs. Pages turning. Every sound told a story. She absorbed it all without trying. Her family watched her closely. They expected questions or fear, but she remained calm. She did not ask what would happen inside the room. She did not ask who the justices were. To her, this place was just another space filled with sound, waiting to be understood. When her turn came closer, a staff member walked by and called out numbers. Each time a number was called, someone stood up and disappeared through a heavy door. Some returned smiling. Others looked disappointed, their shoulders low. The girl noticed everything, even if she did not react. Before her turn, she watched an older student come out of the room. The person looked frustrated, shaking their head while speaking quietly to a companion. The girl did not know what piece had been played, but she could feel the weight of failure in the air. It did not scare her. It made her curious. Her teacher arrived late and sat beside her, whispering simple encouragement. There were no big speeches, no pressure-filled words. Just a reminder to listen, to breathe, and to enjoy the piano like she always did. The girl nodded. She had heard these words before. Finally, her number was called. The sound of it echoed louder than she expected. Her family stood with her and walked toward the door. The hallway felt longer now. Each step sounded clear and slow. When the door opened, the sound inside stopped suddenly, as if the room itself was waiting. The evaluation room was bright but serious. A grand piano sat in the center, its surface shining under the lights. It looked different from the old piano at home, smoother and stronger. The girl felt a brief moment of surprise, not fear, but respect. This piano had a voice she had not heard before. At the far end of the room, the justices sat behind a long table. They were calm, experienced, and unreadable. Papers lay in front of them. They looked up as the girl entered, their expressions shifting slightly when they noticed her age. One raised an eyebrow. Another leaned forward. The girl stood still, hands at her sides. She felt no need to speak. She waited, just as she always waited before playing. One of the justices asked her age. Her voice was soft when she answered. The room seemed to grow quieter after that. The justices spoke among themselves for a moment. Their voices were low but firm. They explained that the evaluation involved difficult pieces, often too challenging even for skilled players. They asked if she had prepared something. She shook her head gently. She did not understand the concern. One of the justices placed a sheet of music on the piano stand. It was a piece known for its complexity, filled with fast movements and unexpected changes. Many participants earlier that day had tried and failed to complete it. The justices watched her carefully as they did this, expecting hesitation or fear. She climbed onto the bench. Her feet barely reached the pedals. She adjusted her posture the way she had been taught, but her eyes were already on the music. Notes filled the page, crowded and intense. To others, it looked overwhelming. She did not touch the keys yet. She simply looked. Time seemed to slow. Her breathing stayed steady. Inside her mind, the music was already playing, clear and complete. She heard every note before her fingers moved. The justices exchanged glances. They assumed she would need time or that she would ask to stop. One leaned back, prepared to gently end the attempt. The room waited, heavy with expectation. Outside the room, her family sat silently. They could hear nothing, only the faint hum of the building. Every second felt long. They wondered if they had made a mistake bringing her here. They wondered if the world was too harsh for someone so young. Inside, the girl placed her hands on the keys. The piano felt different, but it spoke clearly. She adjusted instantly, sensing the weight and response of each key. Her fingers hovered. Ready. The justices were about to speak again when something unexpected happened. The girl began to play. The first notes were confident and precise. Not rushed, not hesitant. Just right. The sound filled the room, rich and controlled. The justices straightened in their chairs. This was not what they had expected. Her hands moved quickly but smoothly. Every change in the music was clear. There were no mistakes, no pauses. The piece flowed as if it belonged to her, as if she had known it all her life. Seconds passed, then moments. The room was completely silent except for the piano. Even breathing felt loud. The justices watched closely, disbelief slowly replacing doubt. She was not struggling. She was not surviving the piece. She was playing it with understanding, with emotion, with ease. Each note landed exactly where it should. When she finished, her hands rested lightly on the keys. The final sound faded into silence. She looked up, waiting. No one spoke right away. The justices sat frozen, their expressions unreadable but changed. What they had just heard did not match what they believed was possible. The girl stood from the bench calmly. She had done what she always did, played the piano. Outside, her family still waited, unaware that everything was about to change. The silence in the room felt heavier than any sound. After the final note faded, the girl stood quietly near the piano, her hands relaxed at her sides. She did not smile or look proud. She simply waited the same way she waited after playing at home. To her, the music had ended and that was all. The justices looked at each other, unsure who should speak first. Papers lay untouched on the table. One of them slowly cleared their throat, but no words came out right away. They had listened to many skilled performers over the years, yet what they had just witnessed did not fit into their experience. One justice finally leaned forward and asked a simple question. How long had she been playing? The girl answered honestly. She did not measure time in years or hours. She explained that she played whenever she could, whenever the piano was there. The answer surprised them. It was not what they expected from someone who had just mastered such a complex piece. Another justice asked if she had seen the music before. She shook her head. The room grew quiet again. The idea that she had played the piece so confidently after seeing it for the first time felt difficult to accept. Yet there was no sign of dishonesty in her face. She was calm, open, and sincere. The justices exchanged looks again, this time more serious. One of them asked her to sit back down. The girl did so without hesitation. She climbed onto the bench and placed her hands on her lap, waiting. Her feet still did not reach the floor. They placed another sheet of music in front of her. This one was different, even more demanding in its structure. It had been chosen carefully, meant to test limits. The girl studied the page quietly. Her eyes moved across the notes, following patterns that others struggled to see. Once again, she did not rush. She listened inside her mind before touching the keys. Those few seconds felt long to the people watching. To her, they were enough. She began to play. The music was faster this time, sharper in places, softer in others. The piano responded clearly to her touch. She adjusted instantly, as if she and the instrument were learning each other at the same moment. The justices sat forward now. Doubt was no longer present. Curiosity had taken its place. They watched closely, listening not just for accuracy, but for understanding. What they heard was beyond technique. It was control, emotion, and intention. She completed the second piece without pause. When the final sound faded, the room remained silent again. This time, the silence felt different. It was full of respect. One justice slowly stood up. They admitted something rare and honest. They said that earlier that day, even experienced performers had struggled with these pieces. Some had stopped midway. Others had made serious mistakes. Yet this child had played both without effort. The girl listened, her expression unchanged. Praise did not excite her. It did not frighten her either. She simply nodded, acknowledging the words without fully understanding their weight. The justices asked about her practice routine. She explained simply. She played every day not because she was told to, but because she wanted to. When she heard music, she remembered it. When she saw notes, she heard them in her head. To her, this felt normal. The justices wrote notes on their papers. They were careful with their words. Labels felt too small for what they had witnessed. One of them mentioned that abilities like hers were rare. Another quietly agreed. They asked if she understood how unusual her skill was. She thought for a moment before answering. She said she knew other people found it hard to play the piano. She did not know why it was easy for her. She never thought about it that way. Outside the room, her family waited. Time passed slowly. They listened to footsteps in the hallway, trying to guess what was happening behind the closed door. Every sound felt important. Inside, the justices discussed next steps. They spoke carefully, aware of her age. They talked about guidance, protection, and responsibility. Talent alone was not enough. A child needed support, not pressure. They invited her family into the room. When the door opened, her family entered with cautious expressions. They searched her face first, looking for signs of fear or disappointment. Instead, they saw calm. The justices explained what had happened. They spoke clearly and respectfully, avoiding dramatic language. They said the girl had demonstrated an ability far beyond her years. They admitted openly that the pieces given were meant to challenge even advanced performers. Her family listened in disbelief. They had always known she loved music, but hearing these words from respected experts felt unreal. Pride mixed with worry. They wondered what this meant for her future. One justice reassured them. They said this was not about pushing her into something she was not ready for. It was about opening doors when the time was right. They spoke about opportunities, learning, and careful development. The girl sat quietly during the conversation. She did not interrupt. She did not seek attention. She only looked at the piano from time to time, as if it were calling her back. Before they left, one justice asked her if she enjoyed playing today. She nodded and said yes. That simple answer seemed to matter more than any technical discussion. As they walked out of the building, the world outside felt different. The same streets, the same sky, yet something had shifted. Her family held her hand tightly, aware that this day would be remembered. She looked up at them and asked a small question. She wanted to know if she could play again when they got home. The old piano was waiting. At that moment, it became clear that no matter what came next, music would remain the center of her world. Not trophies, not applause, but the sound itself. The justices watched from the window as the family left. They understood they had witnessed something rare. Not just talent, but purity of purpose. The evaluation was over, but the journey had only just begun. After leaving the building, the family walked slowly, as if none of them wanted to rush the moment. The street noise felt louder than before. Cars passed, people talked, life continued as usual, yet everything felt changed. The girl held her family's hand and looked around with curiosity, not fully aware of what the day meant. At home, nothing looked different. The same small rooms, the same worn furniture, the same old piano waiting quietly in the corner. She walked straight to it and lifted the cover. The keys looked familiar and comforting. She pressed one gently, smiling at the sound. Felt good to be back. Her family watched her closely. They spoke in low voices, careful not to let worry or excitement spill over onto her. They wondered what came next. Offers had been mentioned, guidance promised, doors opened. Yet none of that felt real yet. What felt real was the child in front of them, playing music like it was breathing. In the days that followed, phone calls began to come. Some were short and polite. Others were long and serious. People asked questions about her training, her schedule, her background. Her family answered honestly. There was no secret, no special method. Just a child and an old piano. The girl did not notice most of this. Her routine stayed the same. School in the morning, homework in the afternoon, piano in the evening. She still tapped rhythms on tables and listened closely to sounds around her. Fame had not reached her world yet. Soon, a follow-up meeting was arranged. This time, it was not an evaluation. It was a conversation. The family returned to the same building, though it felt less intimidating now. The girl walked in calmly, greeting the space like an old friend. The justices spoke more openly this time. They explained that what she demonstrated was rare, but also delicate. Talent like hers could grow beautifully, or it could be damaged by pressure. They emphasized patience. They wanted her to stay a child. They suggested specialized guidance, not intense training, but careful support. Short sessions, creative freedom, and plenty of rest. They did not want to turn music into work too soon. The family listened carefully, relieved by the gentle approach. The girl sat quietly during the discussion, swinging her legs slightly. She was more interested in the piano in the room than the conversation. When asked what she wanted, she gave a simple answer. She wanted to keep playing. One justice smiled at that. They said that enjoying music was the most important thing of all. Skill could be taught, but love could not. As weeks passed, her world slowly expanded. She was invited to small gatherings where she played a few pieces. These were not performances with bright lights or loud applause. They were quiet rooms filled with people who listened closely. At first, she felt shy. The attention was new. But once her fingers touched the keys, everything else disappeared. The room, the people, the expectations all faded. There was only sound. Those who listened noticed something special. She did not play to impress. She played to express. Each note felt honest, untouched by fear or ego. Her family stayed close, always watching for signs of stress. When she felt tired, she rested. When she wanted to play, she played. Balance became the guiding rule. At school, some teachers began to notice changes. News traveled quickly. Classmates whispered. Some looked at her differently now. A few asked her to play for them. Others stayed distant. She remained the same, quiet and observant. One afternoon, a school event included a small piano. She was asked if she wanted to play. There was no pressure, just an invitation. She nodded and sat down. The room filled with sound again. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady and clear. The audience grew silent. Teachers exchanged looks. Students stopped whispering. When she finished, there was a pause, then soft applause. She stood and returned to her seat without seeking attention. To her, it was just another moment with the piano. That night, her family talked more openly. They discussed future possibilities, but also limits. They agreed to protect her joy above all else. Music would never become a burden. The girl listened quietly, half understanding. She only knew that the piano felt like home. Wherever it was, she felt complete. Back at the old piano, she tried new sounds, experimenting without rules. Some notes clashed. Others blended beautifully. She learned from all of them. The justices continued to observe from a distance. They shared her story carefully, without exaggeration. They did not want to create a spectacle. They wanted to nurture a musician. One of them remarked quietly that they had failed the difficult piece that day, but she had succeeded without effort. It reminded them why music mattered in the first place. As time moved forward, the girl remained grounded. She still laughed easily, still enjoyed simple things, still listened more than she spoke. Music followed her everywhere. In her head, in her hands, in her heart. It was not a skill she owned. It was a part of who she was. The world had begun to notice her, but she had not changed. She was still the same child, sitting at a piano, listening to sound, and letting it flow. And slowly, quietly, her journey continued. As the months passed, life began to move at a slightly faster pace, though the girl herself stayed the same. Invitations came from different places, some nearby, some far away. Each one spoke about her ability with admiration, but her family stayed careful. They chose only what felt right, what felt safe. Small halls replaced living rooms. Better pianos replaced the old one at home, though she still returned to it every day. No matter how polished the instrument, she always seemed to search for the same feeling she found on those worn keys. It was never about perfection. It was about connection. During one gathering, a respected musician listened closely from the back of the room. This person had heard many talented players before, but something about the girl stood out. She was not performing. She was sharing something private, something real. Afterward, the musician spoke quietly with her family, offering gentle guidance instead of promises. The girl continued learning, but not in the usual way. Lessons focused on listening, not just playing. She learned how silence mattered as much as sound. She learned that music could speak softly and still be heard. These ideas felt natural to her, like reminders of things she already knew. At school, attention grew. Teachers spoke kindly but carefully. They did not want to treat her differently, yet it was hard to ignore what she could do. Some classmates felt proud to know her. Others felt unsure. A few felt jealous, though they did not understand why. She noticed the changes but did not let them affect her. She still sat quietly, still listened more than she spoke. When asked about music, she answered simply. She did not boast. She did not explain too much. She did not know how to put feelings into words. One day, she was invited to play in a larger hall. This was different from before. The space was wide, the lights brighter, the seats filled with strangers. Her family felt nervous. They wondered if this was too much, too soon. Before stepping onto the stage, she felt something new. Not fear but awareness. She could feel the presence of many people waiting. Their expectations filled the air. She paused, closed her eyes for a moment, and took a quiet breath. When she sat at the piano, the noise of the room faded. The keys waited patiently under her fingers. She played slowly at first, letting the sound settle. Then the music began to flow, steady and clear. The audience leaned forward without realizing it. There was no need for loud moments or dramatic pauses. The honesty of her playing held them in place. Each note felt intentional, as if chosen with care. Some listeners felt emotional without knowing why. Others felt calm. A few wiped away tears they did not expect. The music reached them quietly, slipping past thoughts and settling somewhere deeper. When she finished, the silence lasted longer than usual. Then applause filled the hall, warm and sincere. She stood, gave a small bow, and walked off the stage. Her heart was calm. She felt relief, not excitement. Backstage, her family hugged her tightly. They were proud, but more than that, they were thankful. She was still smiling softly, still herself. After that day, more people wanted to hear her play. Stories spread, sometimes growing larger than the truth. Some spoke of miracles. Others spoke of destiny. Her family ignored the noise and focused on the girl. They made rules together. She would rest when tired. She would stop when she wanted. Music would never replace childhood. The girl appreciated this without fully understanding it. She trusted her family. She trusted the piano. One evening, after a long day, she returned to the old piano at home. The keys felt familiar and kind. She played softly, experimenting again, letting mistakes happen. The sound filled the room gently. Her family listened from the doorway. In that moment, they understood something important. The world might see her as a prodigy, but she was still just a child discovering sound. The justices followed her progress quietly. They were careful not to interfere too much. They shared her story only when necessary, protecting her from unnecessary attention. One of them reflected on the day they had tested her. They remembered their own doubts, their own limits. They realized that sometimes true ability does not arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, without asking permission. As the girl grew, her hands stretched, her reach improved, but her approach stayed the same. She listened first. She played second. She began to understand that music could comfort others. She noticed how people reacted when she played. She did not aim to cause emotion, but she felt responsible for the sound she created. This awareness made her careful, thoughtful. She chose notes gently. She respected silence. Her journey was no longer just about talent. It was about meaning. Though many paths lay ahead, one thing was clear. The piano was not a challenge to overcome. It was a companion, walking beside her as she grew. And as long as that bond remained, the future felt open and safe. Time moved forward quietly, the way it always does, one day at a time. The girl continued to grow, not just in age, but in understanding. Her hands became steadier, her reach wider, yet the way she approached the piano stayed gentle. She still listened before she played. She still respected silence. The attention around her never fully disappeared, but it softened. People learned that she was not something to be rushed or displayed. She was someone to be protected. Her family held firmly to that idea. They kept her life balanced, filled with school, laughter, rest, and music woven naturally into it all. She began studying with a small group of mentors who understood her nature. They did not push her to be louder or faster. Instead, they encouraged her to explore feeling, to understand why music mattered. They spoke to her like a person, not a talent. She learned about composers, not as legends, but as humans who once struggled, hoped, and felt deeply. This helped her connect to the music even more. She realized that every piece carried a story, not just notes. At times, she faced challenges. Some pieces did not come easily. Some days, her fingers felt tired. On those days, she stepped away without guilt. She had learned that rest was part of growth. When she returned to the piano, the music felt fresh again. Mistakes no longer frustrated her. They taught her patience. Her family noticed how grounded she remained. Success had not changed her kindness. She still helped at home. She still laughed at simple jokes. She still found joy in ordinary moments. At school, the whispers faded. She became just another student again, known for being quiet and thoughtful. When classmates asked her to play, she did, but only when she felt comfortable. Music was never forced. One evening, a small community event invited her to play once more. It was not a grand hall or a formal stage, just a gathering of people who loved music. She agreed. The piano stood under warm lights. She sat down, took a breath, and began. The music flowed naturally, shaped by years of listening and care. It did not aim to impress. It aimed to connect. Those listening felt something familiar. Comfort, calm, a reminder of why music mattered. After she finished, applause came softly, honestly. She smiled and stepped away. There was no need for more. Later that night, she returned home and sat at the old piano once again. The keys felt worn, but they welcomed her. She played quietly, just for herself. Her family listened from another room, not speaking. They understood now that her gift was not just ability. It was the way she treated music, with humility and respect. The justices who had once tested her followed her journey from afar. They spoke of her carefully, always emphasizing her humanity before her talent. They remembered the moment they had failed the piece and how she had played it with ease. It stayed with them. They realized that true brilliance did not always arrive with confidence or noise. Sometimes it arrived quietly, in small hands and calm eyes. As years passed, opportunities continued to appear, but none defined her. She defined herself through choices, through balance, through love for sound. She learned that music could bring people together, heal, and remind them of shared feeling. This understanding shaped the way she played. She no longer thought about how quickly she could learn a piece or how difficult it was for others. She thought about honesty, about meaning. One afternoon, someone asked her what music meant to her now. She thought carefully before answering. She said it felt like listening to the world and speaking back gently. That answer stayed with those who heard it. The girl who once sat in a quiet room with an old piano had grown, but her heart remained the same. Curious, calm, open. Her story was never about proving others wrong or surprising judges. It was about staying true to what felt right. The moment she played a piece after seeing it for only seconds became part of her past, a memory others held more tightly than she did. For her, the present mattered more. The next note, the next silence. And as she continued forward, one thing remained certain. Wherever there was a piano, she would listen, and the music would follow.